Shin Megami Tensei 2 is a loosely connected sequel to Shin Megami Tensei 1, set far into a future where the Messiah Church instituted itself as the reigning power controlling the three different inhabited areas, Valhalla, Factory and Holy Town, in an overworld otherwise ravaged by demons. The story follows Hawk, a resident in Valhalla who soon finds himself sent on a journey beyond the confines of the human world to overthrow the tyrannical rule of the Church and defeat the unjust powers of the gods pulling the strings behind the scenes. And in a speedrun you can do this in just about 4 hours, look at that, and only half of it is spent trying to get Heqet to join you. Today I want to dive deep into the key pieces that lets us beat this game so fast, analyze the differences between each version of the game, and touch briefly into the mystical any % categories of the SNES and PS1 versions. If you like Mega 10 content, make sure to follow for more and comment about your experiences with SMT2. So without further ado, let's start by going over each version of SMT2. Shin Megami Tensei 2 was originally released for the SNES in 1994. It expanded on its predecessor by adding new demons, new fusions, an expanded story played out in various 3D dungeons, and a dynamic isometric overworld map, and some other quality of life changes were made, such as redrawing the party UI to make the row system clearer, faster, text speed, auto map bound to the shoulder buttons, and auto repeat mode, which is the mode that repeats previous actions when autoing. This game was received well, presumably. I wasn't born yet so I don't know, but it was later remastered for the PlayStation 1 in 2002, with remade graphics and new normal and expert difficulties, where the normal difficulty has a reduced encounter rate compared to the expert difficulty, which is just the same as the original game. A year later it was once again ported to the Game Boy Advance, where they added a connection mode called A-Mode DDS, where you can exchange demons with other people, as well as adding to the game these items called visionary items, which each allow you to see a small cutscene that expands on the original story. This version of the game removed the two difficulties, instead defaulting to the equivalent of PS1's normal difficulty. All versions have their pros and drawbacks, but what Shin Megami Tensei 2 is mostly known for is being an incredibly buggy game that was released with a flyer inside the box teaching you how to not crash the game. Some of these bugs proved to be useful for a speedrun, some of them not so much. The furthest back speedrun that is still available today was done by a Japanese runner named Domineta, a reference to the gun that would crash the original release of the PlayStation 1 version of the game. His time was 4 hours, 25 minutes and 21 seconds, and the route he followed is still similar to the one done to this day. Different from SMT1, the SMT2 speedrun does not have major route differences in between versions, but there are changes and mostly glitches that we have to work around depending on which version and category we're doing. So first I'll approach the standard route done in the most popular version, the original SNES version. You start the game with only Hawk, or Aleph, which is how I'll refer to the protagonist for most of the game, and set your configurations to text speed fast and auto repeat. These are pretty standard speedrun settings. You want your text to go by fast obviously, and every fight that you can avoid menuing by just pressing auto is a major time save. The menus in SMT2 are a bit laggy, and when autoing you don't have the text displayed for every damage dealt from every hit done or taken. On top of that, it makes the animations go by faster, which can't be turned off in the SNES version. You start putting your stats into speed. In SMT2 every character comes preloaded with default set assignments, which are defined by an RNG seed set when you start the game. So you can't prepare your characters for the speedrun by putting 18 points into speed or 18 points into magic like in SMT1. Most of the run we're putting points into speed because as always we want to run away from encounters. But SMT2 has multiple events that are locked behind stat checks, so we route around them. So we also make a very early game switch to putting points into intelligence until we hit a total of 9 points before going back to putting them into speed. And so we complete the tutorial of the game by naming every character, going to the Coliseum, getting the basic equipment and fighting Red Bear, and then meet Hiroko, who is excited to join us to meet the Madame, and we tell her no, we don't want her to join. The reason why we do this is because we want to be chaos aligned early into the run. There are not that many moments to set your alignment one way or the other in early SMT2, but we need to be chaos aligned in order to fuse our all-powerful weapon that we're going to sweep the game with. So because of that, we need to make some very early decisions that put us into chaos. This doesn't really influence the game much for now, after all this happens in the route for every ending, and Hiroko joins us regardless. We get Cerberus and we start recruiting demons in order to unlock the first key to getting through SMT2 fast. Heqet. Who doesn't love Heqet? Heqet is a Seiju, which is a sacred beast, which is a race of demon that's a bit of pain in the ass to fuse normally, but Heqet is the exception, being that we can fuse it with a simple level 7 High Pixie and a totally ever compliant level 12 Heqet. But in order to fuse Heqet, we obviously need some demons, so we make good use of all the intelligence we acquired in battles, and start by recruiting High Pixie and Knocker, before heading up to the bridge and inside the slums, where we recruit an Alp. You can recruit some of these demons in later locations, but we want to fuse Heqet right after defeating Mercurius, so this is the best timing to do so. Then we fuse Alp and Knocker into Ketif, and we need to have hit level 12 to do this fusion, which we reach by finding some random encounters that fall easily to our level 40 Cerberus, and then Ketif and High Pixie results in a beautiful Heqet. So what's the deal with Heqet? Heqet has Trasto and Trapward, and this is vital to get us moving around efficiently in the game. A lot of SMT2 is backtracking and moving through large sections of our isometric world map, so getting out of dungeons or back into your last terminal fast saves minutes off of your speedrun. It also has Medea, which will be our healing source for a large chunk of the game, and Posumudi, which happens to be very useful because of Basilisk, but we'll deal with that later. Heqet is a must-have for your SMT2 playthrough. This boy can get you through that map so fast, but that is unfortunately not all the fusions, and consequently not all the recruitments that we need to do. In this next section, before returning Cerberus to the Madame, we need to recruit Sudama and Ketif, and boy does Ketif not ever want to join you. Some evil was lurking within the developers when they coded the behavior of demons during negotiations in this game. The demons in this game have a tendency to just run away on you. They ask for a lifestone, you give a lifestone, and they try to bail on you, leaving you to try to catch up, which is completely based on RNG. Just like in SMT2, there are some dialogue options that work better than others, but the RNG factor is up tenfold, and we have to do even more recruitments, having to recruit the 5 I've mentioned already, plus Jack Frost in Holy Town, and Deminan the Ore Slave, and Qsif in Factory. So how do we deal with that? Well, mostly by suffering, but exclusively in the SNES version, there is a, albeit annoying, workaround to this. RNG Manipulation. In SMT2, your RNG seed is set every time you load or start a new save file. So let's consider address 7E03FA as our RNG seed. Before you start a new save file, this address will be looping between 0 and 255, and land on a value when the game begins. If you land on a value, for example 68, and play the game normally, then start a new game and land once again on value 68 and do exactly the same actions, you'll get the exact same outcomes. This is because SMT2 has a fixed RNG algorithm, that is, it doesn't have a random component to the result, and so it's possible to conduct RNG manipulation. So some runners do RNG manip in their runs. They aim to start the game on a specific value, which you can confirm based on the first encounter that you get at the virtuals, and execute the exact same actions every time to ensure that they are guaranteed to recruit all the demons first try, on top of not risking dying to Red Bear or any other fights. For anyone watching, it might sound like a no-brainer to do RNG manip, but resetting for the right frame and the isometric map makes the execution quite annoying, so some runners prefer not to use it. But its advantages are undeniable. Another one is being able to fight Basilisk right away. Those who've played the game are aware of how annoying Basilisk can be, as it's a very easy fight in Holy Town that appears as you're traversing the area, but who has a chance to just run away on you or poison your entire party. Being poisoned is especially damaging in the run, as we're very short on MP, have very little resources, and can win fights while poisoned, as the status effect halves the damage dealt by any character. Battle Goose is another dangerous fight, the last one in the factory. So manipping it not only takes a headache away from possibly resetting right after you're done with the recruitments, but also guarantees that you'll get the special item dropped by this boss fight, which is a Sapphire. This is especially useful for the routes for Chaos and Neutral, which need even more gems than the Law Ending route, but I'll touch on that later. We go into Arcadia, talk to Gimel, back to the center to hear about Dalf challenging us at the Colosseum, and transfer back to Valhalla, where we do another fusion. Jack Frost that we get in Holy Town, with Qsif that we get at the factory to fuse Unicorn. Unicorn is another Seiju, which means that it has a useful skill, in this case Stoma. If SMT2 ever gets a remake where we have skill inheritance, the first thing I'm changing in the route is upfusing Heqet into Unicorn so we can cut recruits and have a busted Unicorn with Stoma, Triasto, and Trapward. But unfortunately that's not a thing in any of the SMT2 versions, so we have to have both Heqet and Unicorn. It should be pretty clear why having a Stoma is useful. Random encounters take a long time to deal with, even when you're high level enough that you'll know you'll run away from them, and this game involves a lot of backtracking, walking, and running, so keeping a Stoma up is a must. We also choose to evolve Jack Frost and Qsif specifically due to the way that the limited skill inheritance system works in SMT2. Skill inheritance. In SMT2 you can inherit some skills like Tarukaja, Rakukaja, Sukukaja, or Makakaja from demons, but only sometimes. I don't understand exactly what conditions are checked to allow a demon to inherit one of these skills, beyond one of the fusion materials having it, obviously, but I do recommend this website called oregame.com, who developed an extremely reliable fusion calculator for SMT2. So we fuse Jack Frost and Qsif so we can inherit Rakukaja from Jack Frost. We could also fuse Jack Frost with Ketif as a backup route and inherit Medea instead, but in the SNES route we specifically need that Caitiff for another fusion. So that would involve getting a whole other Caitiff, and I think you know how we'd feel about that. So we defeat Daleth, Beth dies, we talk to Makata, go down to the underground and not rescue Nadia, so we fight Yanis, fight Zane, and some speedruns keep Manip all the way here because Zane is a rough fighter in the SNES version. His attacks just deal a bit more damage than what we're built to deal with. Then we get Hiroko, and because of a weird bug that happens when you don't rescue Nadia, Aleph actually gets a +1 stats increase in all his stats assignment. From here on, most of all you need to do to go fast is just know where to go. You rejoin with Cerberus in front of destroyed Valhalla, and we make use of its power breath against Aleph and go to the underground section of the game. In the original revision of the game, so the one referenced online as revision 1.0, which is the one available on every cartridge of the game, can actually execute a small glitch called Elevator Glitch, which as the name implies, lets you skip the elevator animation. To execute it, you simply place the cursor on the floor you want to go to and press B instead of A. That's just it. This was unfortunately patched out for the revision 1.1, the one you have played if you play the Virtual Console or Nintendo Switch Online versions, but it's a very useful glitch that avoids the 30-second animation of the elevator going down. So we get to Shinjuku with Hiroko, threaten Puck to get a free 10k Maka, and be able to buy a Skull Sword in Asakusa, which is a very useful piece of equipment that reflects physical damage. Drag ourselves through Roppongi and begin the Masakado quest by talking to Hiroko. As we travel through these dungeons, we are adjusting our moon cycle to a specific value before walking in, so we can pick up gems lying in the treasure chest inside, which is a good segue into gems. So most dungeons have at least one treasure chest with one gem, and you can only collect them on full moon. Once you do, there's a chance that a fiend, usually Alice, will appear to try to steal it from you, and you can only hope that doesn't happen. You will die. The reason why we need these gems is to exchange them for demons at the Rex store in Roppongi. We do that on our return trip to Roppongi at the end of the Masakado quest, once we fuse all the Masakado pieces together. At the Rags you can exchange a gem for an item or multiple for a demon. This is your best shot at getting some more Somas, for example, as you can get one for a pearl. The demons you can exchange for are all Seireia demons or spirits, which are otherwise fused by fusing two demons of the same race together. And depending on which gems you exchange, you can get an Earthis, Arrows, Aquans, Flamis, Gnome, Sylph, Undyne, or Salamander. The way you determine which one you get is based on how many points the gems you are changing are worth. Each game has a value assigned and each demon costs a certain amount of points, so a Salamander will run you between 21 and 22 points, which is the highest cost, meaning to get it you'll need to exchange at least a pearl and a diamond, or 2 diamonds. Here's the table of all the values for the gems and the cost of each demon. With this being said, we exchange the sapphire we get at the factory and the topaz we get at the Great Church for a Sylph, and then the turquoise we get at the Shinjuku, and the ruby we get in Roppongi for an Undyne. These two demons are good by themselves. Undyne has Mediarama, Sylph has Traport, and they have decent stats, but we'll use them for a much better fusion later. To get back on the route, we start the Masakado quest with going to Sarutahiko's shrine. At this point, we're level 20, so we're quite under level for the area, and it's not unusual to die to random encounters, so starting with Sarutahiko ensures we jump in levels and the Stoma works again. But in order to get through that fight, we need our endgame sword. So we finally fuse our Caitiff with Deminandi or Slave that we recruited at the factory to fuse a Bicorn, and fuse that Bicorn with the Spirit Sword that we collect in Roppongi to fuse the Deathbringer. The Deathbringer, as the name implies, is a base 137 attack sword that hits for 3 to 5 hits, so a pretty strong sword. You can get it as an item drop from Naragiri or Berith, which are much later game demons, or by a sword fusion with the limitation that this is a Chaos Aligned sword, which is why I make sure to stay Chaos Aligned up until this point. The second key factor to defeat Sarutahiko is going to the bar and getting pissed drunk by having one of every drink with both Aleph and Hiroko. This raises all your stats and makes the fight much safer, and because we had to advance the moon cycle to collect the gem in Roppongi, we know for a fact that we'll never make it to Sarutahiko's shrine before the moon cycle is up again and the effect wears out. So we defeat Sarutahiko and we get so many levels that the stats turn to hexadecimal numbers, and we're going to put 2 into magic so later we can win the disco competition, and the rest into speed to still be able to run away from encounters. Hiroko gets all the points into intelligence because we want her to unlock Estoma and Traport as quickly as possible, as well as have Necroma by the end of the game. So a quick rundown of events. Get all the Masakado pieces, fuse Masakado's body in Asakusa, talk to Hiroko and revive Masakado, take him to the Japanese God's Cave, and don't go in. Transfer back to Holy Town and walk back to the Great Church, get the last doll, open the door to Makai, get Peterson, transfer to the factory, go down the factory, talk to the imprisoned workers and Zane, Traport back to the top, and because we put all those points into intelligence already early into the game to help with negotiations, we can just walk right into the tower. Belphegor goes down easily, as do most fights from here on out, because the Deathbringer is a weapon of mass destruction. And then we go back to Holy Town, watch the TV, talk to Zane, who says he's gonna invade the center, more on that soon, and then we get drunk again on Full Moon, trap wars, and head into the disco competition to win another pillar. Before we leave for the center though, we fuse Freya. So before we enter the Makai section, we fuse our endgame demons, which are Freya, the result of the fusion between Undyne and Sylph, and Naragiri, the triple fusion of Cerberus, Unicorn, and Sudama. It's all coming together. Freya is a generally tanky healer with high HP and MP, Diorama, and most importantly Tarukaja. We have to use Tarukaja with some discretion in this version of the game, because it can overflow and completely tank our damage values, but it's still vital for some fights. Naragiri on the other hand has Rakunda, which is just if not more important. So most fights for the Makai section go like this. Aleph attacks, Naragiri uses Rakunda, Hiroko uses Medea, Freya uses Tarukaja, or Hiroko defends and Freya uses Mediarama, and you auto. So before you know it, you're saving in Tifref and Gemuru is taking you to meet Lucifer and Zane, and this is where the routes split. We're going through the default subcategory that most runners have done, Law. So when we talk to Zane, we say yes to joining his cause and get locked into the Law ending. After arriving in Gebura Corridor, which is the last place you can save before the endgame, we transfer to the center to climb all the way up to Eden and watch Zane fuse with Seth to become Satan. Then we have 5 boss fights still left till the end of the game. 12 gods, Atavaka, Mara, Lucifer, and Yahweh, the final boss fight. So we have to do our prep. At the healer we buy 2 Hangoko, 4 angel hairs, and as many rosaries as we can. The Hangoko are revival items that revive you with full health. Angel hairs heal your entire party's HP for any party members that's law aligned, so unfortunately Freya doesn't get healed, but only her. And rosaries are revival items that get automatically triggered whenever a character dies, in this case Aleph and Hiroko. So our strategy for any fight moving forward is attack with Aleph, Rakunda with Naragiri, use Deathbound with Satan, use Diarahan on Satan with Hiroko to heal back his HP from using Deathbound, and use Tarukaja with Freya. Most fights go down without much problem, and most you have to stop auto at Mara to heal Aleph if he gets paralyzed. Once you enter the Kefil Castle, this is your last chance to save, so you can trapward back to Gebura and save, and then Trastel back to the entrance of Lucifer's castle. You also want to make sure you walk in at Half Moon Descending, so you fight Yahweh at New Moon when he's at his weakest. Lucifer has a chance to charm your party, which you heal with Angel Hair, and before the fight we summon Heqet back to make sure it dies during the fight. Then we walk into Yahweh's throne. Yahweh can be a dangerous fight since it hits pretty hard and has an instant kill spell called God's Voice that always targets and hits the character in your party with the least amount of intelligence. However, he can't kill an undead character. Remember how we killed Heqet in the previous fight? We use Necroma to revive it, and as it has the lowest intelligence stat of the entire party, God's Voice always gets redirected to it, and we're safe from instant kills. What's left is just buffing, debuffing, and letting auto do its thing. Because we always get automatically revived by rosaries, we don't even have to worry about healing, and Yahweh dies quickly. And so we complete our law ending. Time ends after the credits, which are 10 minutes long, but that is the SMT2 law ending route. So what about neutral and chaos? In those categories we don't get Satan, so we're considerably less powerful, one of the reasons why the categories are longer. In chaos we get Lucifer, which does some decent damage when attacking, but nothing worth writing home about. We enter Eden, the final dungeon, at 2 of 8 ascending or 6 of 8 descending and fight Shaddai, Sawat, and Elohim, whose biggest threats are casting stone and some other annoying status effects. And then at Half Moon we fight Satan. Now Satan is actually a hard fight, with 12,500 HP, which is 4,000 more than Lucifer. He has the spell God's Judgment, which always kills a character in first position, and we can't quite Necroma a demon to that position right away. So in order to deal with Satan, the neutral and chaos rights actually do one extra fusion. We recruited Selkit in Makai and fused Freya with Selkit to form Anubis. Anubis has Tempots, which in Nocturne was translated as Holy Wrath, a move that cuts HP of all battle participants whose alignment differs from the caster by 1/4. So our demons take some damage, but on first usage, Satan loses 3000 health, on second 2300 health, and on third another 2000 health, leaving it with about the same health as Lucifer, which makes the fight much more manageable. The one downside to this strategy is that Holy Wrath costs 80 MP, and Anubis only has 107 MP, so we need at least 2 Somas in order to cast it 3 times. You luckily often get a Soma drop from the 12 gods fights, and you can exchange a pearl for a Soma at the racks, but it's an extra consideration in the route. In the neutral route, you also have to fight Kuzuryu, but he literally dies in 2 seconds. So what about the PS1 and GBA routes? So there are some major and some minor changes in those versions, and shoutouts to fellow speedrunner and friend of the channel Jojo07, who compiled a lot of the route differences in this handy document as he braved the PS1 run. Starting with PS1, the biggest difference is that the game kinda sucks. It's laggy, the loading varies and random encounters take forever, the text is slow, the whole game just feels sluggish. This game was also infamous for being released with so many bugs that a revised version was later printed and released into the market, infamously being known as the bugged version and revised version. The bugged version could have the game freeze upon fighting a random encounter, talking to a demon, having a random fusion, worst of all, saving the game. The most infamous bug being how sometimes after you won a battle, a text displaying "Dominate o tenireta," meaning you just got a Dominator, which is a gun you can buy at the weapon store, and this will promptly freeze your game. But in the revised version, which is the only one you can have access to nowadays if you buy the game at the PlayStation Store, they fixed most of the critical bugs, as well as some other bugs in the SFC version, such as the elevator glitch, or buffs overflowing, or the Nadia glitch that gives Aleph an extra stat after rescuing Hiroko. The step counter also changed. So in the SFC version, we adjust the moon cycle to grab chests or final boss fights at the specific moon cycle. The moon cycle advances every 8 steps outside and every 16 steps inside of a dungeon, and the counter resets whenever you go upstairs or take an elevator, but in the PS1 and GBA versions, it never resets, so we have to move accordingly. It also means we can't take advantage of drinking at the bar to have enough magic to win the disco competition, for example, because by the time we walked into the competition, the moon cycle already advanced past full moon and the effect of the drinks were out. So for the PS1 and GBA routes, we have to assign more points into magic for Aleph. In the PS1 versions, auto battle also changed so that certain actions aren't reproduced exactly the same. If in the fight you cast the Arahan to a certain character and then auto, in the following fight, the Arahan will still be used but heal the character in first position instead. This might seem like a small change, but makes a difference for the endgame, where the strategy involves using auto for every fight knowing Satan gets healed by the Arahan. But by far the most dangerous of all changes is that rosaries are no longer consumed automatically. So all of a sudden Yahweh is an actual threat. The strategy is now to buy more angel hairs to keep the party fully healed, healing Freya separately whenever needed. We can auto using those items to try and have the fight go by fast. The Necroma stat is also not as reliable anymore, but we're not quite sure why, as there were no changes to how God's voice behaves. Most of these changes are present in the GBA version as well, but that version is, in my opinion, much better than its PS1 counterpart. Aside from the music, the visuals are more vibrant, the text is faster, the movement is more responsive, you can turn off battle animations which makes the pace of the game much faster, just overall a better experience. So for a while the recommended route for the PS1 and GBA versions was the same, but that changed recently, when the runners found that the GBA version actually has a very easily reproducible casino glitch. I have a video on how to do that glitch, you can check that out. The glitch can only be done in Roppongi, so it didn't lead to major cuts in the recruitments, but it did lead to getting better equipment, which makes the run safer and lets runners keep fusing the Deathbringer. We still get a Heqet for the Heqet fusion though, but it's one less Heqet in the run, and that's always a good thing. This makes this version the fastest one of the 3, with the world record being around 2 hours and 50 minutes, and my personal best being 3 hours. So that was a look into how you can beat SMT2 so fast. For such a glitchy game, it's surprising that you can't just walk into the credits like in SMT1 or something, right? Oh, any percent. Let's talk about any percent, but not this any percent. This any percent. The first recorded run still available was done once again by Domineta, that son of a gun, back in 2014, who completed SMT2 on the SNES in under 2 hours. This run made use of 2 glitches that were fairly well documented at the time but hadn't been put into a route. These were Item Change and the Triasto Warp. Item Change is a glitch that's a bit more complex than what I'd like to cover in this video, but I will regardless leave a link to my friend and fellow speedrunner Symm's channel, who made a great tutorial on how to execute it. Basically, by rearranging items in your inventory, you can have access to random RAM values and get late game equipment as well as some useful items such as a Stealing Bell, which has the same effect as using Stelma. We also use 35 intelligence and magic incenses on Hiroko to give her stats a little boost. This any percent speedrun needed 2 recruitments in order to fuse Heqet, and an executed Item Change to have access to some powerful armor and weapons. Then it executed the Triasto Warp, which is a glitch that puts you out of bounds of the dungeon you were originally in by using Triasto in the same tile that an interaction happened. So what this means is that if you use Triasto in the same tile that an interaction just happened, we can be literally talking to an NPC like the run does at the disco, or by having an earthquake happen in that tile. If you use Triasto instead of the game warping you to the exit of the dungeon, it sets you 1 tile further back from where you were standing. So if you use this while facing against the wall of a dungeon, it'll set you out of bounds. Due to the way that the dungeons are laid out in SMT2, by executing this glitch at the disco in Valhalla, you end up placing Yesod in Makai. From here you can go ahead and get the keys to the gate in Tiferet to fight Abaddon. But there are some other triggers that need to be cleared before you can head in and finish the game, such as defeating King Frost and Basilisk, defeating Battle Goose, and defeating Delph at the Colosseum, so that we can rescue Hiroko from Zane. After Hiroko is rescued, we are safe to complete the game and get locked into Law Ending, the fastest ending, by saying yes to Zane. After defeating Abaddon and entering Gebura, Dominata then transfers to the Great Church to make 9 donations to the Messiah Church, as the game actually uses the addresses to store church donations as the same ones as the flags for having defeated the 12 gods in Gebura. So essentially, by donating 9 times, you defeat 9 of the 12 gods. From there, he goes to Puck's dungeon in Shinjuku to Trieste Warp to the center and head to Eden to get Satan, as that's faster than actually just backtracking, and I don't think you could actually go and do that since you haven't actually completed most of the triggers in the center to go all the way there. Then it's just a run till the end of the game, defeating Atavaka, Mara, Lucifer, and finally Yahweh with the same strats of Sword, Deathbound, and keeping Heqet Necroma to absorb God's voice and consuming rosaries to avoid dying. This run was fast-paced, engaging, and cut out most of the boring parts of the run, which are the underground fetch quests, and so this 80% category became more popular among the few runners than its no major glitches counterpart for quite a while. And for a long time we thought this was the fastest you could complete the SNES version of SMT2. But then, ACE. The summer of 2022, notable SMT1 researcher, glitch hunter, and speedrunner Nico Masaya published a video on unlocking the RAM check in SMT2. This is basically the in-game debug mode where you have access to every RAM flag and can therefore alter your progress in the game with it. This video was a follow-up on a similar one on how to access the RAM check in SMTF. As the games were built on the same engine, the glitch that leads to unlocking the RAM check can be reproduced in both. In this video he explains the steps to execute the glitch, which once again I will not be explaining very thoroughly because for one I honestly don't really know how it works, and I like to study it further and analyze it in a separate video on SMT2 glitches. But in summary, in certain circumstances when your demons die from lack of magnetite, the game starts executing arbitrary code. With this very carefully crafted setup that Masaya developed, it was possible to execute arbitrary code to unlock this RAM check mode in game and therefore set the flags that the game was cleared and just play the credits. So soon after this video came out, Symm used his maniping knowledge from having manipped SMTF and having run Any% and managed to finish the first real-time attack run with a time of 37 minutes and 24 seconds, over 1 hour faster than with the older route. This route went as far as defeating Red Bear, as we need Cerberus to execute the glitch setup, recruiting a manipped Spartan in the Colosseum, and then recruiting a manipped Empusa to have access to Trieste and warp to Yesod in order to have access to the healer, which is part of the setup for the arbitrary code execution. Then we run out of magnetite, the game freaks out, and we transfer back to Valhalla to get a random encounter as it's required to auto through a fight in order for the setup to be complete. If random numbers start showing up on the screen, the setup was successful and we set the flags to turn off random encounters, turn on Holy Town terminal location and complete the neutral ending. Then we transfer to Holy Town, hit the trigger for the credits, and GG's. This obviously led to a split between the old and new 80% categories. A lot of work had been put into the old route, so now the old 80% category is known as 80% no ICE, and the new one is simply 80%. The best time for it is currently 36 minutes and 43 seconds held by Liv. It's been a wild journey watching this category develop into what it is today, from BPO's first Twitter post encountering the glitch in SMTF to now being able to beat the game in under 40 minutes. You're probably thinking, surely this is the craziest way you can complete a run of SMT2, right? PS1 Any%. You would never open the disk tray and swap disks while an area was loading, right? Well, Heqet did in his 2017 masterpiece Shin Megami Tensei 2 Dominator version glitched RTA in 38 minutes and 28 seconds. This run is a one of a kind and essentially takes advantage of how the game's maps are cached in the PlayStation itself to only partially load them by swapping disks while entering a new dungeon. This corrupted map has no walls, and as we mentioned earlier, all the dungeons in SMT2 are kept adjacent to each other in memory, in a bitmap, so you can just walk straight into Valhalla Virtuals to Underground Roppongi, and from Underground Roppongi to the Underground Tokyo Metropolitan Government, which contains some of the best armor in the entire game. Then all you have to do is do a suspended save and reload the suspended save to get the game back into its normal state. The route is simple, it does the game normally until we get Hiroko and then goes to the Virtuals in Valhalla to glitch walk in Roppongi. Then from Roppongi transfer back to Valhalla to end the virtual session, as the game still believes you're inside the simulation, so if you die you'll get sent back to Valhalla. Then from the virtuals in Valhalla, glitch walk to Tokyo Metropolitan Government to pick up the Megiddo Fire and the Holy Judgment Sword. Then we make a small stop at the center to get a vital item that's only temporarily sold in this very unusual shop in the center, the Seija no Fue, or Saint's Food, which actually reflects all physical damage from Yahweh. We load up on rosaries at the Messiah Church, and we defeat Sarutahiko, which is simply the quickest boss fight that's unlocked and that gives us the biggest jump in levels, putting most points into speed for Aleph, as it will be our item user, and into strength for Hiroko, who will be wielding the Holy Judgment Sword. Then we just do another unloading of the map at the virtuals, in Roppongi, and walk straight into Yahweh. The fight is simple, we use rosaries for Hiroko and a Saint's Food with Aleph, and hope Yahweh kills himself from affected damage before we burn out item. And so, in 31 minutes, Yahweh is defeated, and in 38 minutes the PS1 version of SMT2 is cleared. As far as we know, Heqet is the only one who's ever successfully completed a run of this category, and it's quite a marvel to watch, so I recommend to anyone who enjoys being confused but impressed watching a speedrun. Shin Megami Tensei 2 is my favorite Shin Megami Tensei game, and one of my favorite speedruns. There's truly something fulfilling about finishing a run for this game. Watching Yahweh curse your entire bloodline and all the images of every step you took to get this far. And I appreciate all the steps that were taken by many runners before me to develop the routes that I presented today. I'm always excited to look into SMT2, and I have hopes that one day many more people will turn their eyes to this game and give it a try. I also want to thank everyone for the support on the last video. I'm very passionate about these games, and it makes me very happy to see people enjoy my rambling thoughts and outpourings of random knowledge I've acquired about them over these last couple of years of being a Mega 10 speedrunner. If you're interested in more Mega 10 and or speedrunning content, please follow for more. I'm working on a lot more scripts, and I promise I'll post a few more normal ones before I hit you with the Demi Kids content. And leave a comment if you've ever played SMT2 and what you think about the speedruns. That was it for me today, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.